Hello, YouTube friends. Welcome, everyone. Before you get comfortable, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Route 191. No one returns from the last assignment. 1. The silence of the tire's night had fallen with a heavy blackness over the vast fields of Texas. Beyond the range of the truck's headlights, Highway 191 seemed to dissolve into a bottomless pit. It was not unusual for Efrain Salgado to drive at this hour. After 20 years as a trail driver, he had seen it all. Lonely roads, frightening accidents, men crying on the radio, and even bodies on the side of the road. But tonight, there was something different. Perhaps it was the way the assignment came to him. It wasn't his usual boss, nor a familiar dispatcher. It was a call on his personal cell phone. After midnight, a strangely formal voice offered him a double payment for a freight move from an old silo north of Marathon, Texas, to a supposedly closed refinery near Redford. No company in its right mind would send a truck down that route in the wee hours of the morning, much less with such strict instructions. No opening cargo, no stopping, no talking to anyone on the way, and never under any circumstances taking detours. And yet, Ephraim accepted, not out of courage, but out of desperation. My son needs that treatment, he muttered to himself, adjusting his knuckles on the steering wheel. It's not the first crazy thing I've done for him. The clock on the dashboard read 2:14 a.m. I had already crossed half of Route 191, an infamous stretch among truckers. Some called it the dead line. According to stories, the radios would stop working without explanation. The GPS would flicker, and sometimes you could see lights that weren't from any car. Lights that danced like bicycle headlights, but moved as if they were floating above the asphalt. 2. Something moves in the box. It was the cargo that worried him the most. The box was sealed, but not with normal padlocks, but with what looked like stainless steel seals with strange engravings. He had already felt 3 knocks since it started. They weren't like the wobbling of drums or machinery. They were more organic, as if something had been thrown against the walls from the inside. He tried to ignore it. He turned up the volume on the radio, looking for a frequency that wasn't dead. The only thing he managed to pick up was a ranchera song, interrupted by static, followed by a soft voice saying, "He's not going to make it anymore." What the fuck? He turned off the radio with a jerk. His hands were sweating. The air conditioner began to blow colder, as if the system had changed itself. Outside, the desert looked like a sheet of frozen dust. Not a soul, not an animal, not a night bird, until he saw it. 3. The figure next to the sign 100 meters ahead, under an old rusty sign that read, Kilometer 67, Route 191. There was a human figure, standing still, not moving, like a statue that someone forgot in the middle of the road. Ephraim slowed down, rubbing his eyes. At 3:09 a.m., Efrain spotted something he did not expect to see in the middle of the desert. A truck stopped on the side of the road. The paint was the same dull blue as his, but more deteriorated, dirtier, as if it had been under sandstorms for years. The headlights were off, the windows soaked from the inside, although there wasn't a drop of moisture outside. Slowing down, Efrain noticed something else. The unit's number was 4317. Exactly the one his former boss told him never to mention. A cursed number among old trailers. Rumor had it that this unit disappeared in 2007. It was operated by a man named Genaro Rocha. He never showed up. His truck, his cargo, his radio, everything vanished on Route 191, and yet, there it was. Efrain hesitated. A part of him wanted to speed up, but another, the more reckless one, made him slow down. He grabbed the flashlight and got out of the truck. 5 minutes, that's all, he said to himself. He walked toward the abandoned cab. The driver's door was ajar. A dank stench akin to wet meat wafted from inside. As he peered in, his heart almost stopped. There was a logbook. The page was open, soaked in a viscous liquid, barely legible, but you could make out the last thing Genaro wrote. "They won't let me open the box. They say if I see what I'm carrying, the trip is over. But something in there speaks to me. It says my name. It promises things. It says it can make me eternal. He says the route does not end in Redford. He says it never ends." Ephraim stepped back, slipping on something slimy. He looked down. It was a tongue. A human tongue, dry, black, split in 3, but with no body. He ran back to his truck. 2. The voices of the trailer. As I moved down the road, the knocking on the box turned into whispers. At first they were muffled sounds, like sobs seeping through the metal. Then they began to form words, different voices, some low, others so high-pitched they sounded like squeaks. They all said similar things to him. "You won't make it. The box opens by itself. Your son already belongs to us. Keep us company, Ephraim. Just one more to go." He broke out in a cold sweat. His knuckles ached from squeezing the steering wheel so hard. He took the rosary hanging from the rearview mirror. He squeezed it tightly, but the rosary fell apart. It didn't fall. It didn't break. It turned to dust in his hand. 3. The town that does not exist. About 10 kilometers ahead, the road took him to an unexpected detour. It did not appear on his GPS or in his route memory. A makeshift, handwritten sign read, "Refinery, 3 miles." Ephraim hesitated. The instructions were clear. Do not take detours. And yet the map on the board now showed that this was the shortest way. How? Who modified it? He looked back at the main road, dark, empty, alive. And then the detour. He turned, maybe out of fear, maybe because a voice inside his head told him that if he didn't, he would never finish the trip. 3 miles later, instead of a refinery, he came to a town, a place that should not exist. Wooden houses without windows, lighted lanterns with no visible electrical source, a bar with the word "welcome" written backwards, and people, motionless, people standing in silence in the middle of the street, all looking at the truck. They were dressed like trailers. One of them held up a sign, "Load empty, do not stop." Efrain braked hard. He rolled down the window. A woman with a white face and completely black eyes approached. "What's in the box, Ephraim?" she asked in a two-tone voice, as if 2 people were speaking at once through her throat. "I don't know," he answered in a broken voice. "What if what you're carrying is carrying you?" Efrain accelerated furiously. The truck rammed several of the immobile people. They did not bleed. They did not scream. They just crumbled into white powder. 4. The trail of the missing back on the main road. Something had changed. The truck's radio turned on by itself and began to emit an old audio. It was a man's voice. "Logbook of 2007. Genaro Rocha. I think this is the last thing I record. If anyone hears this, don't stop the truck. Don't look inside. Don't believe the voices. There is no refinery. There's just a stomach, a giant one, and you are the next digestion." The recording was repeated. Ephraim shouted, pounding his fists on the console, but the radio wasn't breaking. The sound was now coming from the chassis' own speakers. Then he saw it, a trail of lights ahead, flickering lights, like flares. Maybe a roadblock, maybe help. He braked. He got out of the truck. He ran toward the lights, and he found photographs. Photos nailed to the ground with rusty nails. Photos of trailers, dozens, maybe hundreds. Some of the faces were familiar. There was one of his uncles, another of a fellow trail rider. But what sent him reeling was seeing his own face, a photo of him, with the date of that same night. He screamed. He fell to his knees. He looked back at the truck. The box was open. 5. What came out of the box? Something was emerging from the trailer. It was not a being, not quite. It was like a sack of flesh with multiple small mouths, eyes scattered where there shouldn't be eyes. But the worst thing was its voice, because he spoke like his son. "Daddy, Daddy, get me out of here." Ephraim fell backwards. The thing was sliding along the asphalt, leaving a trail of oil and blood. It advanced slowly, absorbing the light, stealing heat from the air, and after her, more came. Other figures, smaller, like deformed replicas. They were taking the photos from the floor, one by one, and devouring them. Ephraim ran to the truck. He climbed in. He closed the door. He started the truck. The box closed again on its own, with a squeak of live metal. He did not look back, just drove. No GPS, no map, no address. Route 191 was no longer a highway. It was a path to something deeper. A stomach that slowly digests those who accept that last assignment. And he still didn't know if he was escaping or reaching the end. When the clock on the dashboard read 4:44, Ephraim began to hear a new voice on the radio. This time it was not an old recording, nor a hallucination. It was a live broadcast. Unit 4317, Unit 4317, come in, said a female voice, mechanical, emotionless. Last call. You are moving out of tracking range. Repeat. Last call. Ephraim, panting, on the verge of tears, pressed the radio button. Who are you? Where are you? A silence. Then the answer. Here, where it all begins. Tell me what you saw, Ephraim. Tell me what you're carrying. I don't know what I'm carrying. I just want to get to the destination. The voice responded with inhuman calm. Destination, Ephraim. That thing you're driving is not going anywhere. The destination was miles ago. What you're doing now is digesting yourself. At that moment, the entire truck shook as if an inner force was twisting it from the bowels. The steering wheel vibrated. The seats creaked. From the box came a buzzing sound, like the screeching of insects inside a honeycomb of bones. 2. The ebb and flow of the road. The landscape began to change. There was no more desert. There was no longer any sign of civilization. The pavement became damp, like sweaty skin. The sky was perpetually red, but without sun. The edges of the road now had teeth. Not trees, not poles. Human teeth. Some giant, some tiny, growing from the earth. Some moved, chewed the air. Yoram felt something in him change. His breathing was heavier. The sweat tasted sweet, like syrup. And when he looked in the rearview mirror, he no longer had pupils. His eyes were completely white. He stepped on the accelerator. The rear box groaned. It didn't creak. It didn't squeal. It groaned. A female voice whispered, "Ephraim, don't run away. You're already in. You're already part of it." And then in front of him, he saw a figure standing in the middle of the road. It was his son, small, about 8 years old, wearing a mud-stained t-shirt and the same tennis shoes he had lost 2 years ago on a hike. He raised a hand. He smiled, and Ephraim braked with all his might. The truck slid, skidded on that meaty road. The wheels roared, smoke billowed from the engine. But when he finally stopped, the boy was gone. There was only a mirror, a huge mirror in the middle of nowhere, reflecting not the truck, but the open stomach of a creature. And inside was him, sleeping, trapped. 3. Final digestion. He returned to the wheel, trembling. The tachometer was reversed. It was now reading negative numbers. The air inside the truck was thick. The walls were slowly melting. From the speakers came sounds of laughter, mixed with baby cries. He tried to open the door and jump out, but the doorknob, it had an eye, and it was looking at him. Why is this happening to me? He shouted into the void. Why me? A voice from the box answered him. Because you accepted without asking. Because you signed without reading. Because the road needs new drivers. And you, Ephraim, you always wanted to get lost. Isn't that right? The road was transformed into an organic tunnel. The sky collapsed. Everything was muscle. Everything was tongue. Everything was digestion. The circle of lost drivers. At the end of the tunnel, a metal structure appeared. It looked like a gas station. It had lights. It had pumps. But instead of gasoline, they dripped blood. Trucks were stopped. Dozens. Each one with open doors. Each with a name on the cabin. And Ephraim, when he looked, saw that everyone had his. They all said Ephraim Morales, with different dates of birth, different photos. It was as if 1,000 versions of him had made this same journey, and none returned. A man got out of one of the trucks. He was dressed just like him, but with a half-melted face. He smiled. Welcome, brother. At the end of digestion, here we are, all trailers of the last order. Here we live in eternal transit. Here no one returns. Ephraim wanted to run, but the ground caught him. It wasn't dirt. It was muscle. It embraced him. It squeezed him. He pulled it inside him. 5. The stomach of the roads inside the box. He saw it, at last. The order. It was a heart. Not a human one. It was gigantic, pulsating, covered with letters in ancient languages. Arteries were connected to the sides of the trailer. It was what gave it movement. Every heartbeat pushed the engine. And around the heart, there were bodies. Bodies of trailers fused to the chassis, mouths sewn shut, eyes open, hands tied to the metal. Some were still breathing. Ephraim fell to his knees. A voice came into his head. His voice, but another version of him. You finally understood. We are not drivers. We are parts of the organism. We are its legs, its skin, its oil, its lungs. I don't want to be part of this, he whispered. You already are. You always were. Ever since you entered 191. Ever since you accepted without asking. Since the world stopped being asphalt and became intestine. 6. Eternity in transit. When he woke up, he was back behind the wheel. The truck was moving by itself. The sky was black. The asphalt was alive. An old song was playing on the radio. A female voice was singing something like a lullaby. The box no longer knocked. It only whispered. Ephraim no longer needed to eat, nor drink, nor sleep. Just driving. And I knew that ahead, at some impossible curve, another detour would await. Another mirror, another familiar face, another heart to give, and another unsuspecting person who accepts the order without asking. Trail riders crossing the state of Nevada often talk among themselves about certain rest stops along Interstate 80. One in particular is always mentioned with a hint of discomfort. as if they don't quite know whether to remember what they saw there, or whether they dreamed it. It is called Service Area 34B. It does not appear on official maps. It's not on Google Maps. But it does show up sometimes when the truck's GPS fails, or when you stop to rest on the deserted stretch between Winnemucca and Battle Mountain, just after a sharp turn that the locals call the Devil's Gut. And that's what happened to Julio Caballero, a Mexican truck driver who'd been driving in the United States for more than 15 years. Julio was one of those who avoided truckers' radios and WhatsApp groups where legends were shared. He said that nothing scared him except running out of gas in the middle of nowhere. But that night, fear found another way in. One, the invisible detour. It was the third night in a row that I had driven without stopping to do more than pee and stretch my back. He was hauling a load of heavy machinery from Sacramento to Cheyenne, and was already more than halfway through the trip. The sun had long since gone down, and the moon was barely a curved shell overhead. Sleep was starting to hit him hard. He rubbed his eyes. The road was an endless straight line. Every so often a sign would pass by that seemed to repeat itself. Gas and rest area 2 miles ahead. Then came another one that read, Service Area 34B. Julio frowned. I don't remember seeing that one before, he muttered. He thought about passing by, but his stomach growled. He had a strange craving for machine coffee and stale muffins, things that only taste good at midnight. As soon as he took the designated exit, a strange silence enveloped him. The noises of the truck, the vibration of the engine, even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to fade away, as if someone had turned down the volume of the world. The exit ramp was dark, with no lights. The pavement had deep cracks, and weeds ate away at the edges. About 50 meters away, the figure of a rest station appeared. A diner-type restaurant, an old gas pump with only one pump, and in the background, a restroom building with fogged-up windows. It looked uninhabited, but not abandoned, as if someone had cleaned it just a few hours ago, but no one was working there. Julio turned off the engine. The silence was so thick that I felt the pressure in my eardrums. 5 minutes, he said, and went downstairs. 2, the 3 faces in the window. He walked toward the diner. The lights were on inside. There were tables with folded napkins and cups set out. A neon sign was flashing above the door, open. But upon entering, he found no one. Not a waiter, not a cook. Just that smell of overheated coffee and old grease wafting in the air. He advanced with a slow step, as if he did not want to wake something up. He sat down at one of the tables in the back, the one closest to the window. From there, he could see his truck parked under the dim yellowish light of the solitary pole. And then he saw them, 3 faces, 3 figures attached to the outside glass of the bathroom, on the other side of the rest area. 3 people standing completely still, looking at him from a distance. They did nothing. They did not move. Julio blinked. When he looked again, they were gone. He got up abruptly and left the diner. But when he opened the door, he found a different night. The moon had disappeared. The lights in the rest area were off. The air was thicker, with an aroma of rotting earth. His truck was still there, but something was dripping from the driver's door. Something dark. She ran to him. Julio didn't know at what point she started screaming. He only remembers his hands shaking, his fingernails tearing the bathroom floor, and his breath coming in short gasps. The photograph was still there, in front of him, like an open trap, an image of him sleeping in his own truck, with an impossible figure behind. The shadow with bandages, the one with the rusty key, the cubicle doors, all of them, open slowly. No noise, without startle, as if the hinges knew that true terror creeps in silently. Julio backed up until he bumped into the sink. Objects merged from inside each cubicle. Not people, not figures, things. Strange, rusty things. A muddy child's shoe, a cap with dried blood on it, a notebook with names crossed out, a bone, another one, a broken backpack, and a radio transmitter that suddenly turned on. From him came a muffled voice with a Kansas accent. Area 34B, Area 34B. This is Truck 712. If anyone hears this, please. I am no longer on the map. The night is not progressing. Something got into my cabin. Then, static. Julio threw the device away as if it was burning. He staggered out of the bathrooms. The air outside was not much better. Thicker, denser. The sky, once showing stars, was now a sheet of motionless black clouds. He ran to his truck. But he wasn't. In its place was another truck. Same model, same color, but covered with rust, with plates from 20 years ago. The cab, wide open, keys hanging by a bloody thread. Chapter 1. Lights in the rearview mirror. There was something about Texas highways that never quite felt human. The sun would leave without a word, and as soon as the last orange light faded over the horizon, the highways would begin to mutate. Straight, empty lines stretched out like sleeping snakes, and any sign of life seemed swallowed up by the desert dust. It was 2:13 a.m. when Joel Calderon, a truck driver with more than 20 years on wheels, passed the rusty sign announcing Kilometer 237. There was nothing particularly special about that stretch, or so he thought, but the sign had a peculiarity. It looked new, as if someone had put it up that very afternoon. It gleamed with an impossible white paint. Under the dim light of its headlights, Joel was driving a red Kenworth with a refrigerated trailer loaded with frozen meat, bound for El Paso. The radio hissed a mix of static and sad country, and the night weighed on his eyes like a wet blanket. He was sleepy, but he couldn't stop. The last rest stop had been at an unnamed station some 120 miles back, and he didn't want to risk delaying the load. As his fingers drummed on the steering wheel, the old CB began to hum. Somebody copy me. Joel frowned and leaned toward the device. This is Toro 18. I hear you. Who's out there? Nothing. Just the electric chirp that sometimes arose when the weather interfered. The sky was clear. No storms in sight. Probably another guy playing, he muttered to himself. 15 minutes passed in absolute silence. Joel kept his eyes firmly on the white line to the right, using the edge of the road as an anchor to keep from falling asleep. It was then that he noticed something in the rearview mirror. 2 lights, headlights coming from behind, at a safe distance but clearly faster than him. That was strange. The road had been deserted for hours. He checked his speedometer, 63 miles per hour. If they were going to pass him, they would soon. He adjusted his side mirror and waited for the vehicle to pass him. But the headlights were not coming. What the hell? 5 minutes passed, 10, and the lights were still there. No closer, no farther away, always in the same spot, as if they were floating in a parallel dimension. Joel swallowed. He slowed down a little. He waited for the other truck to do the same, or pass him. Nothing. He looked again, but this time the headlights were not in a straight line. They were high, as if they weren't coming from a car, but from something suspended in the air behind the trailer. Joel blinked. A helicopter? No way. There was no sound. And besides, the lights weren't moving. They were just there, watching him. He retook the CB. This is Toro 18. Does anyone else see those lights in the back? Is anyone on 385 south? Silence. A minute later, a voice emerged. A raspy, old voice, as if worn by the sand of time. You're already in the dead end, Toro. Don't look again. If you see them 3 times, they follow you. Joel froze. Who the hell are you? It doesn't matter. Just listen. If you look a 3rd time, there's no turning back. I did it, and now I drive alone. Forever. Joel dropped the microphone. His heart was pounding. The voice faded without a goodbye. He looked at his mirror again. The lights were still there. 2nd time. Don't be an idiot, Joel. He's just another truck driver, he said aloud, but his own voice trembled. He turned up the radio. He tuned in to an evangelical station. A female voice was saying something about the end of time, about the hour of darkness, about men disappearing on the roads. Joel changed the channel. The lights would not go out. After a couple of miles, he spotted an exit. An old roadside diner with a couple of yellow lights flashing and a rusty truck parked outside. It didn't show up on his GPS. Maybe a coffee will wake me up, he said, unconvinced. He turned. Instantly, the lights in the mirror disappeared. Joel stopped the truck and stood for a minute in absolute silence. Not a sound. No crickets. No wind. Not a sound. The restaurant was called Diner 237. So was the kilometer. The facade was dusty, as if it hadn't been touched in years, but the lights were on. He got out of the truck and noticed that the rusty old truck had no tires. It was sunk into the ground, covered in cobwebs. He opened the door of the shop. A bell rang. The place was empty. A curly-haired waitress with a stained apron looked at him from behind the counter. She didn't smile. "Coffee?" said Joel. "Sure, honey," she replied, but her voice sounded hollow, as if coming from an antique speaker. Joel sat at a table. Everything smelled musty and disused. On the wall there were pictures of truck drivers, men in plaid shirts, weathered faces, smiling. One of them looked like him. "How long has this place been open?" The waitress left the cup on the table. She did not answer. Joel looked at her, confused. Her eyes were very black. "Do you know if there is more traffic on the road tonight?" "There were lights following me." "Those lights," she finally said, "are not traffic. Not since 1983. Joel swallowed. "I beg your pardon? Many come in here when they see them. We give you a chance. One chance. Not to go down that road." "Which way?" "The one that has no way out." Joel stood up. "Look, I don't have time for this. I just want a coffee. I'll pay and leave." "You don't have to pay, Joel," she said, and this time she smiled, but her smile was wrong, as if her face didn't know how to form one. Joel took a step back. The bell rang again. A man entered. He wore trucker's clothes. One arm was missing, the hollow covered by a black cloth. His skin was ashen. "I saw the lights 3 times, said the man. Joel ran toward the exit. He climbed into the truck. He started the engine. The restaurant disappeared instantly. In his mirror, the lights were back, and this time they were closer. Chapter 2. Those who do not arrive at dawn. Joel didn't stop. He kept his foot on the accelerator as if his life depended on it. And maybe it was true. The radio emitted nothing but static, and every time he passed a sign, he noticed they were all blank. There were no names, no exits, just a black road stretching eternally in front of him, and the lights were still there. They seemed to move at a pace that matched his breathing, and sometimes, when he dared to look in the rearview mirror out to the corner of his eye, he noticed how they flickered as if they were eyes or flames, but not headlights. The fear had mutated. It was no longer that nervous jolt you feel when you see something out of place. It was something else, something deeper, as if the road had swallowed the world he knew and was leading him to a place that belonged neither to this time nor to this plane. Kilometer 237. I had passed it more than an hour ago, and yet there it was again. The same sign went by, the same glow, as if caught in a loop. No, it can't be, he said aloud, tapping the steering wheel. He dialed on his cell phone. He had no signal. He checked the GPS. Just an endless red line. No cities, no destination. Just en route. That's when something crossed in front of the truck. Joel slammed on the brakes with all his might. The trailer skidded, screeching over the asphalt, and came to a stop a few feet from what looked like a human figure in the middle of the road. What the fuck? He got out of the vehicle with the flashlight. There, standing in the middle of the road, was a little girl. A little girl of about 11 years old, barefoot, with a white nightgown hanging from her like a wet cloth. She was soaked, although it was not raining. "Are you all right?" asked Joel, approaching slowly. "What are you doing here alone?" The girl was unresponsive. Her head was down. Her dark hair fell in sodden locks over her face. She was trembling. Joel took a step closer, and then she lifted her face. It had no eyes, only dark, moist sockets, as if instead of flesh there was mud. Joel's flashlight failed. He blinked, and when he turned it on again, the girl was no longer there. He turned around, spinning in circles, panting. No, 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 no. He returned to the truck. He locked the door. He started the engine, the lights behind. Now they were to the side. They were no longer just headlights. They were shadows, figures walking along the side of the road parallel to the trailer. They had no faces, no visible legs, but they glided as if they were crawling. A dozen, maybe more. Joel turned off the radio. The CB buzzed again. "We told you not to look 3 times. It was the same voice as before, but now it was inside his head. "Who are you?" Joel shouted in desperation. Those who did not arrive at dawn, those who passed the detour and never came out. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. You're already one of us. Just keep driving." Joel wobbled on the seat. He tried to slow down, look for a turnaround, a gas station, anything. But the road was no longer a road. It was an endless tunnel, a river of asphalt that was shrinking more and more. And then he saw it. A truck, like yours, parked on the side, exactly the same. Same model, same color, same license plate number. And inside, someone sitting in the driver's seat. A body, the body of himself. Joel shouted. He accelerated to full throttle. He closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, it was dawn. Sunlight was rising in the east, reddened. The trees were reappearing. The GPS read, "Exit to Marfa, 3 miles." Was it a dream? She whispered, not quite believing it. The radio was playing country music again. A commercial was talking about discounts on tires. The road was alive again. Joel took a deep breath. He laughed nervously. He glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing. He smiled, but when he looked down at the board, he noticed something cold. His right arm was wet. He touched it. It was blood and mud. And in the passenger seat, there was something that wasn't there before. A soggy teddy bear with its eyes gouged out. Chapter 3. The Return Never Exists. Joel did not stop, with his white knuckles gripping the steering wheel, his jaw tense, and his heart pounding so hard he felt it would burst. He kept the trailer in a straight line. It was dawn, yes, but what was dawning was not the usual world. Something about the sunlight wasn't right. Something in its texture, in its smell. The air had a faint scent of damp earth and burnt flesh. Next to him, the teddy bear was still there, wet, without eyes, like the little girl. He wanted to throw it out the window, but it wouldn't budge. He tried with all his might. His right arm, the one that had been covered in mud and blood, just didn't respond, as if it was no longer his. And then he felt the heat. A warm puff, rough and dense, came up from the seat, as if the cabin was breathing. The rearview mirror showed him something that froze him. He was no longer alone. Sitting just behind the passenger seat, in the sleeping compartment, was the little girl. Her white nightgown clung to her skin, as if it were still dripping with water. Her face was lowered. Her hair covered her eyes, or where they should have been, and next to her, stacked silently, were other objects. A child's shoe with dried mud, a worn trucker hat, a briefcase with initials RLA, torn Arizona National Trucking Club credential, objects left by others, for those who, like him, passed through kilometer 237 and did not know how to stop in time. Joel knew he had to run, but there was nowhere to run. Turning back was like diving into a dark sea. Going forward, on the other hand, was increasingly confusing. The GPS marked impossible routes, places that didn't exist, roads with no names. A message blinked constantly. Last wrote, 237, repetition in progress. 3 hours later, the sun had risen completely, but it did not burn. It was a light that gave no heat, just a warm, artificial glow, like a lamp lit inside a coffin. Joel stopped the truck in front of a dilapidated gas station. The neon sign flashed the letters EVECO, although it had clearly once read VERCO or EVERYCOMPANY or something similar. The pumps were covered in rust, but still leaking. Not gasoline, but a thick black liquid that fell in slow pulses like clotted blood. He decided to enter. The bell over the door rang when he pushed it, but no one was there. Just dark aisles, dust-covered shelves, cans expired more than 20 years ago, and in the background, a tube radio playing slowly with an old waltz and a voice. "You're taking too long, Joel." The driver turned around immediately. In front of him, behind the counter, stood a man with grayish skin, pupil-less white eyes, and a thin smile. He wore a clerk's uniform, but everything about him smelled like a graveyard. "Who are you?" "The same as you were, years ago, or minutes. Here, time fades away." He pointed his chin toward a wall full of photos. They all came too. None of them left. Joel walked to the wall. Photos of truck drivers, some smiling, others serious, all with the same background, the station. But each one had his eyes gouged out, as if someone had scraped them out with fingernails. "You're dead, aren't you?" asked Joel, trembling. "Dying means going out. This is worse. Here we stay. Here we exist, but we are no longer." The employee handed him a cup. It contained no coffee. It was mud. with small bone fragments floating. Why is this happening to me? Why to me? Because you saw the lights, because you didn't follow the code. 3 times look, 3 times knock, and once to enter. Joel remembered. When he first saw the lights, he looked at them, then he called on the radio. 3 times. Then he kept going without stopping. He didn't take the detour. He didn't stay at the previous gas station. And now, there's no return, he muttered. There never was. Back in the cabin, Joel thought about doing the unthinkable. Stop, get out, run. But the steering wheel no longer turned, the engine no longer responded, and the scenery out the window didn't change. It was always the same stretch, always the same intersection, always the same sign, kilometer 237. And then he listened to the radio, a new voice, different, younger, alarmed. Is anyone there? Do you copy? I just saw a little girl in the middle of the road. She was barefoot. Does anyone know if there is a station nearby? Joel leaned toward the microphone, trembling. Don't stop. Don't look at her. Don't look at her 3 times. Silence. Then the voice came back. How do you know that? Who are you? But before Joel could respond, the static came flooding back, and the road split, not in 2, but in many, as if space itself collapsed, elevated routes, suspended in nothingness. You won't make it. The box opens by itself. Your son already belongs to us. Keep us company, Ephraim. Just 1 more to go. He broke out in a cold sweat. His knuckles ached from squeezing the steering wheel so hard. He took the rosary hanging from the rearview mirror. He squeezed it tightly, but the rosary fell apart. It didn't fall, it didn't break. It turned to dust in his hand. 3. The town that does not exist. About 10 kilometers ahead, the road took him to an unexpected detour. It did not appear on his GPS or in his route memory. A makeshift, handwritten sign read, Refinery, 3 miles. Ephraim hesitated. The instructions were clear. Do not take detours. And yet the map on the board now showed that this was the shortest way. How? Who modified it? He looked back at the main road, dark, empty, alive. And then the detour. He turned, maybe out of fear, maybe because a voice inside his head told him that if he didn't, he would never finish the trip. 3 miles later, instead of a refinery, he came to a town, a place that should not exist. Wooden houses without windows, lighted lanterns with no visible electrical source, a bar with the word welcome written backwards, and people motionless, people standing in silence in the middle of the street, all looking at the truck. They were dressed like trailers. One of them held up a sign, Load empty, do not stop. Ephraim braked hard. He rolled down the window. A woman with a white face and completely black eyes approached. What's in the box, Ephraim? She asked in a 2-tone voice, as if 2 people were speaking at once through her throat. I don't know, he answered in a broken voice. What if what you're carrying is carrying you? Ephraim accelerated furiously. The truck rammed several of the immobile people. They did not bleed. They did not scream. They just crumbled into white powder. 4. The trail of the missing back on the main road. Something had changed. The truck's radio turned on by itself and began to emit an old audio. It was a man's voice. Logbook of 2007. Genaro Rocha. I think this is the last thing I record. If anyone hears this, don't stop the truck. Don't look inside. Don't believe the voices. There is no refinery. There's just a stomach, a giant one, and you are the next digestion. The recording was repeated. Ephraim shouted, pounding his fists on the console, but the radio wasn't breaking. The sound was now coming from the chassis' own speakers. Then he saw it, a trail of lights ahead, flickering lights, like flares, maybe a roadblock, maybe help. He braked. He got out of the truck. He ran toward the lights, and he found photographs, photos nailed to the ground with rusty nails, photos of trailers, dozens, maybe hundreds. Some of the faces were familiar. There was one of his uncles, another of a fellow trail rider, but what sent him reeling was seeing his own face, a photo of him, with the date of that same night. He screamed. He fell to his knees. He looked back at the truck. The box was open. 5. What came out of the box? Something was emerging from the trailer. It was not a being, not quite. It was like a sack of flesh with multiple small mouths, eyes scattered where there shouldn't be eyes. But the worst thing was its voice, because he spoke like his son. "Daddy, Daddy, get me out of here." Ephraim fell backwards. The thing was sliding along the asphalt, leaving a trail of oil and blood. It advanced slowly, absorbing the light, stealing heat from the air, and after her, more came. Other figures, smaller, like deformed replicas. They were taking the photos from the floor, one by one, and devouring them. Ephraim ran to the truck. He climbed in. He closed the door. He started the truck. The box closed again on its own, with a squeak of live metal. He did not look back, just drove. No GPS, no map, no address. Route 191 was no longer a highway. It was a path to something deeper. A stomach that slowly digests those who accept that last assignment. And he still didn't know if he was escaping or reaching the end. When the clock on the dashboard read 4:44, Ephraim began to hear a new voice on the radio. This time it was not an old recording, nor a hallucination. It was a live broadcast. Unit 4317, Unit 4317, come in, said a female voice, mechanical, emotionless. Last call. You are moving out of tracking range. Repeat. Last call. Ephraim, panting, on the verge of tears, pressed the radio button. Who are you? Where are you? A silence. Then the answer. Here, where it all begins. Tell me what you saw, Ephraim. Tell me what you're carrying. I don't know what I'm carrying. I just want to get to the destination. The voice responded with inhuman calm. Destination, Ephraim. That thing you're driving is not going anywhere. The destination was miles ago. What you're doing now is digesting yourself. At that moment, the entire truck shook as if an inner force was twisting it from the bowels. The steering wheel vibrated. Impossible curves, bifurcations that went nowhere. And in the sky, hundreds of lights, like truck headlights, like fireworks, all caught in the same net. Joel's trailer moved forward on its own, as if the will was no longer his, as if the tires obeyed another force. And then he saw something in front of him. A figure standing in the middle of the track. An older, bearded man, a truck badge on his chest. She recognized him. It was the face from a station photo. The man raised his hand. Joel stopped the truck. The old man went upstairs. Without a word, he sat down beside her. "You're not alone, son," he said, finally. "But no one believes us. Nobody listens. Only when it's too late. Is there a way out?" The old man looked at him with dead eyes. "Exit? Number. But you can choose who you pass the steering wheel to." Joel didn't understand at first, until he felt it. A pressure in the chest, an emptiness in the throat, as if something was detaching his soul from the flesh. The old man put a hand on her shoulder. "It's your turn to be the warning, Joel. Your turn to talk to them on the radio." and Joel inadvertently nodded. Just outside of Roswell, New Mexico, a young truck driver named Danny Morales pulled into a dusty station with the sign EVECO. A picture frame with many photos of truck drivers caught his eye. In one of them, a man with a tired face was staring at him. He had a beard, a cap, and looked like he had just come out of hell. A small plaque read, Joel Meteor Anders. Last call, 2317. Year unknown. Danny didn't know why, but he felt a chill. That night, as he took his route, he passed the rusty sign, Kilometer 237. He saw something on the road. A girl, barefoot, wet. He lifted the radio, curious. Does anyone know if there's a gas station around here? I just saw a little girl on the road. She looks lost. Static. Then, a voice. Don't look at it. Don't look at it 3 times. Danny dropped the radio. He frowned. He looked in the rearview mirror. The girl was gone. Only the echo of a warning remained, and a new teddy bear on his seat, still soaking wet. And so, the loop continued. Because Kilometer 237 is not a place. It is a choice, a trap on the Mobius strip of night routes, and many more to come. Many more will not make it to sunrise. Chapter 1. The Voice. In radio. The windshield of the old Freightliner was covered by a heavy rain, almost as if the sky wanted to turn off the highway once and for all. Ernesto El Tano Morales had been traveling the same route between Texas and New Mexico for 19 years. And that night, as he guided the steel-laden trailer across Interstate 10, something told him he should have stopped much earlier. The clock on the dashboard read 3:12 a.m., an hour no decent truck driver wants to be awake. It was the so-called dead hour, when radio stations go silent, garages shut down, and ghosts get on without hitching a ride. El Tano was not a superstitious man. He had experienced everything on the road, accidents, highway bandits, even once witnessed a tornado that ripped off a colleague's trailer. But that night, there was something different, something opaque. The sky didn't look black, but a rotten gray, as if something evil was fermenting. With one hand on the steering wheel and the other reaching for his thermos of coffee, he tuned in his trusty CB radio, as he always did, to break the monotony. Breaker, breaker. Any colleagues on I-10 East at mile marker 23? Over. He muttered in a gruff voice. Silence. A couple of seconds later, a soft static responded, and then, Tano? A soft, moist, feminine voice came through the channel. Can you hear me, Tano? He dropped the thermos. Who? Who is this? Over? Static returned. Silence. Just the rattle of water against the windshield. El Tano frowned. It was not uncommon for drivers to make jokes on the frequency, but there was something about that voice, something intimate, as if they were whispering to him from the passenger seat. I must be hallucinating, he mumbled. Purely a bad dream. He looked out the window again. The road was a tunnel of liquid blackness. There was not a single pair of oncoming lights. No other trailers, just him and the rain. And then the radio came on again. Tano, stop. You're going straight to her. You can't go through Kilometer 23. This time there was no static. The voice was crystal clear, as if it were right next to him. He felt the cold sweat on the back of his neck. He turned the volume down a little, swallowed saliva, and turned to the radio. Who are you? What kind of joke is this? Who the hell is speaking on my frequency? Over. The answer came in a whisper that seemed not to be voice but vapor. I'm the one you failed to save 5 years ago. Eltano stepped on the brake, as if a snake had bitten him. The trailer screeched, the load shook, and the engine snorted like an irritated bull.